This episode of UK Low Carb Podcast is sponsored by Deliciously Guilt-Free. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to UK Low Carb. This is a very special series because I'm joined by Keto Kev, and Keto Kev's going to tell us about his new course he's got.
Hi guys, I'm Kev Mason, aka Keto Kev, and I'm here to tell you about a great opportunity that you can undergo when you take my Key to Health course.
So join us each week where Kev and I will be going through different key areas that he'll be teaching in his course, and you can find out how to enroll if you want to find out more. It'll be every single Tuesday, and at the end of this series, we also have a live Q&A where you can ask him anything you like, and we'll put that on the podcast for you to listen to as well. So it's about time we get into the series, Key to Health. Hey everyone, I am so excited to have Keto Kev back with me again. Now, just going back a few weeks ago, he came onto the podcast. He was somebody I wanted to speak to for years, but I was a bit nervous to do so because I know he can be quite a direct person and he's got a lot of knowledge to share. And I was really pleased when he did come on. I think we got on like a house on fire. And I said to him in that recording, you know what, Kev, I'd love you to come on and share some other bits and bobs. So he said he'd be very happy to. And so we're doing the series Key to Health, KEyTO. Can you see the spelling there? I love it. Key to Health. And he's here now. So hi, Keto Kev. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, there we go. I pressed the wrong button. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
It's all going so smoothly.
Well, I'm really happy to be back. I really enjoyed the last time we chatted, and I'm definitely happy to move forward again and do more.
Great, fantastic. So you've said to me that your program is coming out soon, isn't it? I think it's imminent, actually. And actually, as people are listening to this, it probably will be available online already. And this course affected these 4 topics, and we're going to go into those today. These are different areas that are on your course. Is that right?
Yeah, so I've broken it down into like 4 main concepts, which I call the pillars, and which we spoke about last time, which is food, fitness, health, and well-being. And I believe in the fact that, like I said before, that you can survive with 3 pillars and still be fine. You know, you can be okay. You know, 2 is when you're going to topple over, and 1, you've got no chance of surviving with just 1 pillar. So I like to look into the four topics, the four modules. So I've broken them down into a course that is going to be easy to digest, and for people to understand. And I've cut all the kind of BS out of it, and I've the science part of it as well.
Yeah, excellent. Because what I find interesting is sometimes in the keto world, we talk a lot about food and nutrition. And of course, I know that's your first topic, but actually sometimes people forget the other stuff. And if you look at animals actually have all these things generally sorted out for them. It's just our modern society means we miss out on some of them, like sleep, or we don't do movement like we should be. And I think it's really important to focus on those different areas. So today is food as a topic. So take it away.
Yeah, so what I do is I break down also, and I talk about foods. Obviously, I start off with what foods I recommend, and then the reasons why I recommend them as well. So there are some people that, for example, that recommend peanuts and green beans. I don't, because of what they can do to the gut. So I take those out of the equation, but I explain why. So, you know, I go into this on the course, and I talk about why lectins can be damaging to the gut health, what they can do by stimulating insulin response and stuff like that. So it's important to not just look at, you know, account your macros side of things, because that's where a lot of people fail on keto as well. They and I see it every single day. And when I do my morning kind of Instagram scroll and check over what's going on, and I have a look for people, and they say, yeah, they're doing keto, and I have a look, and I go, okay, top tip, gluten is not keto. Just thought I'd let you know. And they come back and they say, well, I'm doing dirty keto, and then I want to rip my ears off or my eyeballs out because I can't listen to that. So I'll explain to you as well, you know, like there is no such thing as dirty in keto or lazy keto. That is just an excuse to chow down on things that are not healthy, that are not good for the body, and then call it a ketogenic diet because it's with quote unquote inside your macros.
Yeah,
So
I mean, just want to say on that, I think the macros argument is a bit like saying calories, isn't it?
Yes.
So, you know, if you just change a calorie to it's in my macros, doesn't matter what it is. So I could have my macro equivalent of seed oils that day, you know, and like, you know, pea proteins instead of animal proteins. It might fit in the numbers, but the quality of the ingredients is essential that you're kind of missing out there.
That's exactly it. And that's what I do as well when I break it I'll talk about, like also things to do with food, which is, like what kind of protein you need, breaking down animal protein versus plant protein. And I'll go into gluconeogenesis, which is directly food related, thermogenesis and things like that. And like how fiber is not always the best thing that you can have. And maybe we should be eating a little bit less fiber and not concentrating on fiber a little bit. And then I'll talk about the vitamins and the minerals inside each food. And even though I'm like enjoying more of a meat heavy diet, I'm doing this more on a ketogenic level. So I'm going to go into things like, the spinach and stuff like that I personally avoid. And then we break down for food, we break down how to track macros as well, because if you are going to go down that macro tracking route, you want to do it properly. We also talk about coffee and the effects that coffee can have, because it is a kind of food or a drink, and how coffee can actually, depending on your personal your personal body, how it can actually hinder weight loss instead of actually aid in weight loss.
Oh, wow.
I'll also break down the nose to tail theory, or not theory, but the nose to tail subject. Talk about sugars, all different kinds of sweeteners that we claim or that people say are calorie free and they're okay on keto, but some of them or most of them are not. Nutritional labels, how to read them, how to recognize things, what to look out for. So that's kind of the food portion of the starter, basically, on how it goes.
Amazing. So can I just ask on that point then? So food label reading, because I want to dive into some of this stuff with you to get a feel for it. With regards to the food reading, the label reading on food, I was actually looking because I'm very interested in chocolate right now because I'm trying to develop keto chocolate. And you look at other brands. I'm not talking about the small kind of keto brands. I'm talking about like the industry sugar-free ones. And I was horrified where they advertise as sugar-free because it got a very low amount of sugar in one of these products. And actually, if you look at the carb count, it is through the roof. And all they've done is they've found some kind of carbohydrate that's not technically a sugar, but it still counts as a carb in your. And I was like, God, that's processed rubbish. It really is. Whereas actually, the thing I've realized that the more you can eat proper real food and not have to worry about the food label, the better, right? It's when you kind of have a really complicated food label, you suddenly realize this is probably made in a factory with people who don't care about what's in your food. They're more interested in the money in your pocket.
Yeah. I mean, the independent kind of, the small kind of producers, like yourself, and there's other many out there, they look into it because the person starts the company because they've actually, if a person starts a company because they're interested in health and they're interested in the health of their friends and other people, then they're going to start the company because they want to help. If a large company, like we can't name because we don't want to get in trouble, but the commercial kind of diet companies, if they come out with a product and it says keto written on it, then it is 99.9% of the time junk, because they do not have the consumer in mind. They have the penny, the pocket in mind, and they want to make money and they want to piggyback off of that. So if you're looking at small independent kind of producers of food, then you're going to get a good quality product. But looking on the back of a label, if you have to spend 10 minutes reading through the ingredients or trying to work out what something is, or Googling what an E number is, or what what this kind of really
what preservatives are,
exactly, then you are looking at a duff product. You want to be staying away from that. And that's what also I explain, very, very easy and very basic, and it's not as hard as what people think. So it's good to know these kind of things.
Yeah, fantastic. So, okay, then, just some of the other things you're talking about there, and you said about the things that you don't eat, and you mentioned some plants and things. Now, I think this is an area that a lot of us, when you start kind of low carb or keto, depending how strict you are at first on your macros, that is, people start eating green vegetables, and I eat a lot of greens. Well, not a lot, but I do have them now and again. I must admit, actually, I've lost a kilo this week. I'm really chuffed myself.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I'm really pleased with that. I think it might be a bit of water retention, but I'm really pleased. And the biggest difference is two things. I'm eating less, which I didn't plan to do. I'm just so full on like really good protein now. I don't need it. And the second thing is I'm sleeping more, which is just that's changed everything, which I never realized how important it was. But the thing is, though, I do eat broccoli now and again. I have spinach now and again. And you were recommending just then you don't eat spinach. So can you just break down a bit about the vegetables that are maybe not as good in your opinion and the ones that may be better? Or is it better in some ways to kind of leave them behind, which I know for some people might be a bit more extreme and they might not be so comfortable with?
Well, I go on the kind of general principle that meat is my nutrition and plants can be the medicine. So I don't know where that came from. I know my wife told me. Again, we always go back to my wife because she's the fuel behind everything. So I don't know anything unless she told me. No, I mean like so she's sitting down here. She's a puppet. She's telling me what to say.
Is that a string on your arm? I can see just
Yeah,
pulling
it
you up
is,
and down a
mate.
little bit. Yeah, okay.
So when you look at, so I go for nutrition comes from meat, and then plants are really good. I mean, there are some good plants out there, but and I go more into when I talk about the health side of things, then that's when I dive really deep into things like lectins and oxalates and those, because those are like really, you need to be careful of those, especially oxalates. So when someone goes to the doctor and they say, I've got a kidney problem or something like that, and doctor turns around and says, what do you eat? And they say, oh, I've just started a ketogenic diet about 4 weeks ago. And the doctor goes, yeah, that's super bad for your kidneys and it's really bad for your bladder and blah, blah, blah. That's because they don't know that oxalates, which are pretty high in things like spinach, almonds, dark chocolate, tea, and a little bit in coffee as well. They're just the main ones. There's also rhubarb as well. And the reason, by the way, you can't eat a rhubarb leaf and it'll kill you because that's so high in oxalates that it's gonna kill you. That's why, because of the
Didn't know
oxalates.
that.
Other bits as well, but mainly oxalates.
Yeah.
So they are high oxalate foods. Now, what oxalates do is they crystallize inside the body. And if you are eating spinach, almonds, because we add spinach to things. I don't know why we added spinach into a keto diet because it's just a green leaf. Why didn't we eat it before? We didn't eat it before because it didn't taste very nice. So we're forcing ourselves to eat spinach, which no one really likes. It's defect of all nutrients because it's got so many plant toxins in there that all the nutrients in there are pretty much non-existent anyway. There's no protein in it. Popeye did not get strong eating spinach.
Yeah.
So it's like, so we add spinach to it, and these are high in oxalates. Now the body can process 50 milligrams of oxalates per day. All right. And if you break that down into how much you can have, and you're having replacement breads and cakes with almond flour and spinach for dinner and dark chocolate, because it says eat a little bit of dark chocolate with almond butter on it. And you're drinking tea as well, black tea and green tea, especially, you're going to overload your kidneys and your bladder and create oxalates in your body. Now, the extreme end of things, which people have said, is you can actually form oxalate crystals in the back of your eyeballs as well. And apparently, these neat, which I've got pictures of, which you'll see in the course, and I'll send you as well at some point. That I watched an interview or a talk, a lecture is what the word I'm looking for, with Dr. Paul Mason, and I think he's an Australian guy.
I was talking to him yesterday on Twitter, actually.
No way, he's a legend.
Him and Gary Fettke have given me a really hard time about the Ashes tournament recently. So, so I say it here, I'm actually being bullied by this man. Not only am I talking to him, he's been really horrible to me and hurting my feelings. Anyway,
if it's only about cricket, then it's okay.
Yeah, horrible.
But he's a top guy, and he explained about oxalates and the crystals and things like that. And that's where I first found out the information. And then I looked a little bit more into other people in the carnivore world. And that's what I break down in the food as well. I mean, I touch it slightly in the food. But the food side of things, I play devil's advocate, and I go, okay, you can have spinach on keto, but you need to be careful with it, like really careful with the amount that you eat, as long as alongside these other things. But yeah, he done a great lecture, and there was these crystals, there was these big crystals as well, and they form crystals or they form other things. The good thing about oxalates, though, so there is a plus side, is they are calcium binding. So if you are having a meal and they are with calcium inside, like if you're having milky dairy products with it, then they bind to the calcium and they are easier to process through the body. So there's a good side and a bad side. The bad side is if you're eating too much, then you're going to overload your body.
Yeah, yeah. I drink a lot of tea, and actually, I've stopped that now. I don't drink any tea now until about midday, and then I
Mhm.
drink it until about 4 in the afternoon, and I stop again. I just drink water the rest of the time, and that I think that's been a big part of my weight loss. But I just suddenly realised if I'm drinking loads of tea, which I'm a tea addict. I mean, my teeth are more
Yeah,
tanned than my face. I drink that much. Then basically, I probably need to be careful on that from the oxalate point of view. Is that a
yeah.
bit like a sort of a kidney stone? Then is that similar? Is that
Yeah,
what
that are kidney stones. Yeah, they're caused by
that is?
oxalates,
That
and
right?
doctors say no, they're not. But we've not that I want to badmouth doctors and say I know better than them, but we all know that there's a whole array of doctors out there, leading from carnivore doctors all the way down to vegan doctors, but the majority are in the direction that we are not. So
Yeah.
they are just so you've just got to be careful what you do.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's great. Okay, so I just want to ask two more areas, really. I think when it comes to food, I always just break into the three kind of macros, really. So, can we talk a bit about protein and then we'll talk about fat? So, just a little hint there about what's on your course with regards to sourcing the best kind of proteins, because the last 5, 6 years, protein has exploded in the marketplace, just like keto is now. And it annoys me. I know it's a bit unfair because we're on the same side, preaching from the same side on this, but I think many listeners can relate to this. It annoys me how suddenly they put a fraction more protein into a product and they call it high protein suddenly. And you think it's got the same rubbish though underneath that protein. Like,
Yeah.
come on, I'm not stupid, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that. So just talk about where you source your protein from and what do you teach in the course with regards to protein.
Yeah. So the main protein source for any meal should be based around animal protein. That's the number one important thing. The reason why is because the molecular structure, or the structure of the protein itself, is more bioavailable than what plant protein is. It's a higher amount of nutrients compared to plant protein. Like it's like we are animals, we eat animal protein. It's what we're built from, it's what we want to, it's easier to digest than plant protein as well. But the main difference between plant protein and animal protein is plant protein has or plants have a lot of fiber in them, and fiber doesn't get absorbed, so the nutrients don't get absorbed, so you just get rid of it. And again, it's not as bioavailable as what animal protein is, and that's the
Yeah.
number one thing, and that's the number one thing.
Yeah, you know what? We've actually hijacked like our progress in evolution terms, haven't we? So
Yeah.
animals that are ruminants are grazing and chewing the cud like for hours and hours of their day. We literally have with other predators, we've just completely skipped that and taken all the energy that they've been storing and making. We have one really rich, meat rich, like their body based diet. Basically, we eat them and then we don't have to eat for like 24 hours, if not
Yeah,
longer. And we've got our brains free to do other things. It's
exactly.
incredible how that's linked to our human evolution. And yet I think we're trying to deny that sometimes to ourselves now for different reasons. And I think it's dangerous.
Yeah, it's scandalous the way that they're coming up with these ideas about how we can have plant protein, and also they're starting to throw in more plant proteins into keto products as well, like like pea protein and things like that. And it's like, and I've seen soy protein as well. And why, how anyone can think that soy is even edible to humans? Never mind, extracting and breaking down. When you look at okay, so when you look at like we'll take soy for example, and you look at the protein in soy, or you look at a soybean itself, what have you got to do to that bean to get anything worth subsidizing? How much have you got to eat of that to
Yeah.
actually satiate a human being and fuel that human being? And to get the protein out of it, it's got to go through a massive process of getting rid of other things in it as well, where you can just literally go to a cow and you can eat, you can eat raw meat. So you can eat that raw. And, if you can't eat a bean or a soybean raw, then, I'm not eating it. Definitely not. That's
Yeah.
also something that I agree with. Like, if you can't eat it raw, then don't eat it.
But that's true. I mean, you just said about a cow there because Dr. Ballast came on this show a few weeks ago, and he was saying, rightly so, that actually there's no animal that's actually made for a low fat diet. So he said, if you look at a cow, it ingests a low fat diet, but actually it digests what its bacteria makes for it. So the cow's not actually eating the grass. Well, it is eating it, but it's not digesting the grass. The cow is just making its microbes digest it, and then it's eating the product. No animal on earth can do that. It's incredible that we think as human beings we're above nature. And also he was saying, the protein doesn't get into your body in the same way, like you said about the fiber, but also it's a different type of protein. You're not evolved to be able to digest it unless you highly process it. And then that's dubious in other ways, because why would you want chemicals and all the process of a factory to make your food for you? It's a weird age we live in, isn't it?
I mean, I just can't understand why people take. I mean, I understand why people want to go to the shop and buy a bar for convenience and it's got keto written on it, or to enjoy a cake or something like that. But I don't class those as highly processed. And anyone that, like we said, anyone that produces these things, like yourself producing these chocolates and things like that, they have the knowledge and the understanding behind it. But
I'm making it for my kids. That's the difference. I'm making it for my kids to eat and not eat rubbish, to have some chocolate, but no, they're just eating the real ingredients, not the sort of nasty stuff. Exactly that. Okay, so finally then, let's talk. Oh God, there's so much I could talk about. Gut health, and that's really interesting as well. I could talk about fats. So should we, because I did say I'd ask you two questions. All right, I'll go for gut health first. You said earlier on about the coffee element. It's not as high in oxalates, you said, as tea, but there's a gut health issue there. And I find this fascinating how, and I think actually keeping a food journal might be a good thing for a lot of people to do, to try and work out how you respond to certain things. But there are certainly times in keto that I've noticed that things seem to like pause or stop, and you're like, well, I've not changed much here. What's happened? And it could be something as simple as, you said in that case, coffee and other food. So what sort of foods do you think are affecting gut health, and how do you teach that in your course?
So there are different foods that that basically affect the gut. They affect the absorption of the vitamins and the minerals inside, inside the body. The number one thing which I talk about as well is gluten, and how that is basically, it binds onto all the nutrients, and then it's not. So gluten isn't, it's basically, you can't be processed within the body. And gluten is like one of the number one most dangerous things that a human can eat, because it can damage all sorts of the body. And this one is the thing that really drives me the most into doing what I do. So if you imagine that the inside of the intestines is a brick wall, like in the way like a tube station or something, and what gluten does is it basically binds onto the inside of the gut wall on the microbiome, and then these little things on the tips of the microbiome is called the microvilli, and they bind onto those. And what they do is they tap away. And I love using this analogy. It's like if you've seen the film The Hobbit, where they channel down and they're sitting on their little swings and they're tapping away, and they find the jewels. And basically that's what gluten does. It taps away at the inside of these bricks, but it doesn't tap away at the brick. It taps away at the connected tissue, which is the mortar, which is the weakest part of the wall anyway, because the brick is stronger than the mortar itself. So it taps away at that until it's big enough that it can go through and cause leaky gut. And I had this conversation with my kids this morning. So leaky gut happens to every human being on the planet, and someone can turn around and say, well, I don't get affected by leaky gut, but that's because they don't know it. So there's going to be a certain amount of inflammation that our body can fight off regardless. And if you are a celiac or gluten intolerant or anything like that, then you are, you're going to be up that scale a little bit more. And you'll be more susceptible to leaky gut because you're celiac, so you're going to get leaky gut syndrome more than what someone that is not. So they can process the gluten out of their body quicker. So it comes out of their body quicker because it doesn't get digested, it doesn't get absorbed or anything like that. It just comes straight back out again. So it's an undigestible protein, is what gluten is. And the people that say gluten is okay on a ketogenic diet because it's not a carbohydrate, it's a protein, that's because they don't understand the health aspect of what they're eating, which is why it's so important that we have to look into what we're eating and not just tracking and counting macros, because the gut the gut and the brain are the two most important things on the body. You need your gut and you need your brain. You can live with one arm, you can live with one leg, you live with no legs, you can live with no arms and no legs. But if you start having damage to your brain or your gut, then your
Yeah.
body's going to start dying. Basically, it's going to break down, and
That's
that's no
fundamentally you, isn't it? Really, those two things. Yeah. And actually,
yeah,
mental health is very linked to your gut as well. They've proven now, haven't they? There's a
yes,
huge connection between the brain and the gut. Massive
yeah.
connection.
So if you're eating these things, and also lectins as well, because lectins bind onto nutrients, and then they don't get absorbed into the body, and you're just not getting what these foods are meant to be for. And that's why I aim towards a more carnivorous way of keto, or more fat and more protein animal foods. But you can still enjoy these foods, or to some extent, you can still have spinach if you want to have spinach. You can still have cruciferous vegetables, but they can also damage the thyroid. So you've got thyroid issues, which is obviously we need a healthy thyroid to lose weight. So if you have a damaged thyroid and you eat things like nightshades or brassicas, then you're going to cause more damage to your thyroid and you're not going to lose weight. So it's like, you've really got to look at the whole picture. You can't just look at, okay, that's within my macros, so I'm going to lose weight. Because yeah, sure, you'll lose weight, but these people that are only losing weight are going to put it back on again because they're not eating the right nutrient dense amounts of foods.
Wow, amazing, fascinating stuff. And I think as time goes on, the gut health is going to be understood more and more and more, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it is such a complex thing, isn't it? And if you look at the microbiome of like hunter-gatherer tribes, they have so much more of like a diverse like microbiome than we do. And it seems like our diets are the reasons why ours is less than theirs, because genetically we're not different. So it must be like an environmental factor, and that must be food. Yeah. I mean, it could be other things too, but food's a big part of it.
It is, yeah. I mean, the gut is like the unexplored deep sea. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, yeah,
we know a little bit about it, but we don't know everything about it. And that's like the least knowledgeable part is the gut microbiome, because it's so complicated.
yeah, totally agree. Fascinating. Okay, so let's just finish up on fats quickly if we can, then, Kev, because obviously fat is probably the thing that most people, when they start keto, suddenly learn they can eat the stuff, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize," and they just go for it. And
Yeah.
actually, I'm a bit embarrassed to say I didn't really know about seed oils being an issue until much later down the line. It was actually fat was fat in my mind, so I could fry an egg, eat the egg in seed oil, and that's a keto meal. But actually, that's not quite that simple, is it?
No, it's not. So the quality of the fat is really important as well. And we also want to be getting most of our fats from animal fats, because they are the most healthy types of fats. And if you cook with animal fats, which is what I always recommend, then they have got a higher smoke point, so you can take them up to those frying temperatures. Because most of the seed oil, I think, like I'm okay with olive oil, but not for cooking. You can't cook with olive oil. If you
Yeah.
cook with olive oil and you take it up to high temperatures, it's going to become carcinogenic. And then you've got the argument that people say, going down the wormhole, that the Mediterranean diet and all this kind of stuff cooks with it. But no, just do a bit of research and find it's not. Avocado oil is okay as well. But again, olive oil and avocado oil, they're okay. Or coconut oil is okay. Or coconut fat, not MCT oil. I'll point that out now. You can't cook with MCT oil.
Yeah.
So those three oils are kind of, they're okay. You can have them in salads and things like that. But also, if you look on a economical standpoint, none of those things are grown in the UK.
Yeah.
So why would you have them anyway? I mean, they're okay.
And they're
for a
heavily
treat.
extracted as well. I mean, like an animal will have
Absolutely.
like a layer of fat on it, whereas
Yep.
this stuff, you have to try and suck it out of the avocado,
Yep.
suck it out of the, squash it out.
So when you look at those three, and they are highly processed, like you said, and they travel around the world, they're highly processed as well. I mean, they're not the worst things in the world. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't have them. They do taste nice. I like coconut oil, avocados, and olive oil. But animal fat, when you cook a goose and you cook it raised up out of the
Oh,
oven,
yeah.
look at all of that fat that comes out of it. Now,
Yeah.
what is the point in throwing that in the bin? That is the number one most delicious thing in the world, is goose fat or beef tallow or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
So these these things are made for us to eat. If you want to have olive oil and stuff like that, then fine, have it as a dressing. But just be mindful of where it's come from, the journey that single avocado has had to take, and like when this whole argument with veganism and things like that about wasting water, think of how much water is used on these kind of farms to produce olives, to produce, I don't know about coconuts, and avocados use a lot as well. So just be a bit mindful of those. So fat has to come from, or doesn't have to, but should come from animal protein, from animal source. Sorry, that's the number one, and they're the best fats as well, because they're just more healthy.
You know what annoys me a lot? The fact that, like, you're in Germany, I'm in Britain, and I was talking to an academic here at Cambridge recently, and he said, if you listen back to the show, people will know who this is. But anyway, he said that, you should really avoid saturated fat. It's really bad for you. And I said, well, that's interesting, because just looking at our evolution, like in Britain, for instance, we wouldn't have access to coconut oil or any of those better oils. We certainly don't have access to rapeseed oil or anything like that. So we only had access to animal fats. That's the literal fat we had for millions of years. And you're now telling me that's the bad one. He said, well, we had olive oil. And I was like, what, in Cambridgeshire? Are you 10,000 years like going back like longer than that? Are you crazy? Like, of course we didn't. It's like when somebody says to you, you don't eat bananas. Where the hell do you get your potassium from? It's like, do you think your grandparents had bananas? Like going back, really? Is this anyway? So it's interesting that people have got so into that mindset, the Mediterranean diet, and somehow vegetable oil is better for you, even though it's actually invented for like engines to run rather than humans to run. So I find it incredible. And animal fat tastes better anyway.
Yeah, it does. But I break it all down in the course as well, what fats are what and why you should avoid them and things like that. But also with the things like the rapeseed oil and the sunflower oil and stuff like that, they are heated to such high temperatures that they are already carcinogenic before you've even done anything with it. So then you're going to go and cook with it again. It's just going to activate those carcinogens again. So they're super dangerous.
I didn't know that. Wow.
They are.
It's going to be interesting. A bit like lead pipes in the Victorian era. They're going to look back on it one day and say, were they actually mad eating that stuff at the time? Because I think you're right. Well, Kev, that's been a fantastic first episode. So just to remind everyone, this is part of the Keto Health, which is a series which Kev has put together. It's actually reflecting his course that you can go and access. And where can they go and find that course, Kev?
That's directly on my website, which is www.ketokev.com.
Fantastic. And in terms of connecting with you, I know you're on the UK Low Carb Facebook group, but also you've got your own group as well, haven't you? So what's that group?
Yeah, I do. That's just Keto for Health. That's all it is. Keto, like 2 words this time.
Fantastic. So if you want to be in there, what I'd say about those two communities, which is really lovely, you've got a lot of experienced people. So you might hear what Kev is saying, and I wouldn't say like, please go and pester him. That'd be a bit much. But seriously, in those groups, there are a lot of knowledgeable people, and Kev's putting stuff in there, especially for his own group as well. So go and check those out. And and I'll probably see some of you on the course, because I'm going to take this course. I'm really interested. And that's a real nice first little introduction there. So I'll see you next week, Kev. And next week, what are we discussing?
Fitness, the next one.
Fitness, my favorite subpick. All right, mate. Well, you have a great week, and take care, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
And you see you later, mate.